We're going to have to postpone your promotion for another 6 months, Zoe. The words hung in the air of Elliot Vance's corner office. My smile froze, then slowly collapsed as I processed what he'd just said. 6 more months. After 3 years of 60-hour weeks, after skipping my cousin's wedding to finish the Lancaster project, after turning down the competitor's offer because Elliot had promised me the senior director position was practically mine. I don't understand, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The quarterly numbers exceeded projections by 18%. My team's retention is the highest in the division. Elliot leaned back in his ergonomic chair that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He had that practiced look of regret that never quite reached his eyes. It's not about performance, Zoe. The executive team and I feel you need more seasoning before stepping into such a pivotal role. You understand, don't you? I nodded mechanically while something inside me shattered. I'd given everything to this company. Everything. Of course, I heard myself say. I appreciate the feedback. Later that afternoon, the company-wide email went out. Bryce Vance Elliott's 22-year-old nephew, who'd been with the company for all of 4 months, was being promoted to Senior Director of Marketing Analytics. My position, the one I'd been molding myself for since I started. When he found me in the break room, Bryce had the audacity to ask for my help transitioning into his new role. I mean, no one knows this stuff like you do, he said, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Uncle Elliot says you're the best, which is why he wants you to show me the ropes. I smiled and congratulated him. My teeth clenched so hard I thought they might crack. Happy to help, Bryce. That night, I cried until I threw up. Hey everyone, I'm Zoe Alden, 32, and God, I still can't believe I'm actually telling this story. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. I'd love to know where you're watching from, drop it in the comments below. And please, if anything like this or worse has happened at your workplace, share your story. It helps to know we're not alone in these experiences. So, let me back up a bit. I was a senior manager at a well-known tech firm in Seattle, the kind of place with beanbag chairs and cold brew on tap that calls itself a family while working you to death. I'd been there for just over 3 years, consistently the highest performer in my department. I'm not the type to brag, but I was good at my job. Really good. I have this weird ability to see patterns in data that others miss. My analytical skills had saved the company millions, and I'd built my team from 4 people to 15 in under 2 years. Elliot Vance was the VP of marketing, my direct boss. 50-something, golf on weekends, the kind of man who'd tell you about his Tesla's acceleration while accidentally touching your lower back. But I played the game, laughed at his jokes, accepted the occasional weekend text about urgent matters that could have waited until Monday. For 3 years, I put up with it because I loved my work and because he dangled that senior director position in front of me like a carrot. Just 1 more quarter, Zoe. After this next project launches, Zoe. Once you prove yourself on this client, Zoe. And I believed him. Then Bryce graduated with his business degree, and suddenly, Elliot's nephew needed a job. An entry-level position appeared out of nowhere. Fine. I could live with that. But 4 months later, my promotion goes to him. The morning after I found out, I watched Bryce swagger into the office at 9:45, iced latte in hand, nodding to people who'd been there since 7:30. He took over my project files, my team, even my parking spot. Meanwhile, I was supposed to smile and be a team player. I was devastated, but devastation quickly gave way to something else. Cold, calculated rage. Here's what most people don't understand about revenge. It's not about acting in the heat of passion, it's about patience, it's about planning. It's about understanding your target so completely that you can anticipate their every move. And I understood Elliot Vance better than he understood himself. I knew he was having an affair with Natalie from legal. I knew about the creative accounting he'd used to make his department look better during last year's budget cuts. I knew which clients hated him but tolerated him for the company's sake. But knowledge without leverage is just trivia. I needed to build something that would not just hurt Elliot, it would destroy him. And I needed to be completely untouchable when it happened. So I did what I do best. I analyzed the situation. I gathered data. I identified patterns and vulnerabilities. First step, I became indispensable to Bryce. I worked harder than ever before, showing him systems, introducing him to key clients, making him look good. I stayed late, explaining processes he should have already understood. I fixed his mistakes before anyone else noticed them. "You're amazing, Zoe," he'd say, not even looking up from his phone. "Uncle Elliot was right about you." Every compliment was a twist of the knife, but I smiled through it. Happy to help, Bryce. That's what team players do. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. Every time Elliot bent the rules. Every time Bryce took credit for my team's work. Every inappropriate comment. Every manipulated number. Every lie. I set up a private email account and forwarded my self-evidence. Screenshots, recordings of meetings. Our state has one-party consent laws. Emails where promises were made and broken. I created a timeline of discrimination and favoritism so detailed it would make a prosecutor weep with joy. But I wasn't going to HR. I wasn't going to sue. Those options might hurt Elliot, but they wouldn't destroy him. And they might hurt me too. The woman who couldn't handle being passed over, the difficult employee, the troublemaker. No, I needed something cleaner, something that would leave me untouched. 2 months into my postponement, I got my chance. The company was pitching for the Hartwell account, a massive healthcare client worth over $50 million. Elliot was leading the pitch, with Bryce as his second. I was explicitly told I wouldn't be needed in the presentations. "We want to give Bryce room to shine," Elliot explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "You understand." I nodded pleasantly. Of course, but I'd be happy to help with the prep work. That night, as I reviewed the pitch deck Bryce had created, with my data, of course, I noticed something, a massive error in the projections. The kind of mistake that could cost the company the account and make both Elliot and Bryce look incompetent. I should tell them, I thought. Then I closed the file and went home. The day of the presentation, I dressed carefully. Sleek black pants, crisp white blouse, subtle makeup. Professional, forgettable. I sat in the back of the room as the Hartwell executives filed in. Elliot nodded to me dismissively, the loyal employee there to observe and learn. The presentation began. Slides flashed by market analysis, competitive landscape, projected ROI. I watched the Hartwell CFO frown slightly, check his notes, then whisper to his colleague. He'd noticed the discrepancy. Then came the question period. The CFO leaned forward. "These projections seem optimistic. Can you walk us through how you arrived at a 22% year-over-year growth rate when industry standards suggest 8% is ambitious?" Bryce froze. He looked at Elliot, who smoothly stepped in. "Excellent question. Our proprietary analysis suggests that with our approach, we can significantly outperform industry standards." "Bryce, would you like to elaborate on the methodology?" The blood drained from Bryce's face. He fumbled through his notes, stalling. "Well, our team, we analyzed several factors." I raised my hand slightly. Elliot saw it, hesitated, then nodded desperately. "If I may," I said, standing. "The numbers Mr. Vance is referring to come from our preliminary data. We actually have an updated analysis that might address your concerns." I hadn't prepared anything, but I didn't need to. I knew these numbers inside and out. For 15 minutes, I walked the Hartwell team through a revised growth projection, realistic, defensible, and still impressive enough to win their business. I answered questions clearly, confidently, without notes. When I finished, the Hartwell CEO was nodding. "Now that makes sense. Thank you, Ms. Alden," I supplied. "Zoe Alden, Senior Manager of Analytics." "Well, Ms. Alden, your understanding of our market challenges is refreshing. I wish you'd been leading this presentation from the start." The meeting ended. The Hartwell team left, clearly impressed. In the empty conference room, Elliot turned to me, his face a mix of relief and suspicion. "You knew about the error," he said quietly. I kept my expression neutral. I noticed it might be a concern. "Why didn't you say something before the meeting?" I met his gaze steadily. I wasn't part of the pitch team. I assumed Bryce had double-checked his work. Bryce was gathering his materials, face flushed with embarrassment. I had so much to prepare. Not now, Bryce, Elliot snapped. He turned back to me. Thank you for stepping in. That was good work. I nodded. Happy to help. That's what team players do. As I walked back to my desk, I could feel Elliot watching me, recalculating. Good. I wanted him off balance, because that was just the beginning. 2 days later, Elliot called me into his office. He seemed differentless, confident, more conciliatory. I've been thinking, he said, gesturing for me to sit. You really saved us in that Hartwell meeting. Just doing my job, I replied. Well, your job description might be changing. I've spoken with the executive team, and we think that perhaps we were hasty in postponing your promotion. I kept my face carefully blank. Oh? Yes, Bryce is talented, but he clearly needs more time to develop. We're considering creating a co-director position. You and Bryce would share the role temporarily, and then after a transition period. No, I said quietly. Elliot blinked. Excuse me? I said no, Elliot. I don't want to be co-director with Bryce. He frowned, clearly not used to being refused. Zoe, this is a significant opportunity. Most people in my position wouldn't have had their promised promotion given to the boss's nephew in the first place. I said, my voice still calm. So I'm not interested in half a role that should have been mine months ago. Elliot's face hardened. I'm trying to help you here, Zoe. Don't let pride get in the way of your career. I stood up. Thank you for the offer, but my answer is final. Is there anything else? He stared at me, recalibrating again. No, that's all. As I reached the door, he called after me. This attitude isn't going to serve you well, Zoe. Not here, not anywhere. I turned back, met his eyes. We'll see. That night, I sent an email to Madeline Hartwell, the CEO who'd been impressed with me at the presentation. I'd found her contact information on their company website. I appreciated our conversation during the recent pitch. I wrote, I've been considering new opportunities where my analytical skills might be more valued. If you're open to it, I'd love to continue our discussion. She responded within an hour, inviting me for coffee the following week. When I got home from that coffee meeting, I had a job offer in my inbox. Senior Director of Marketing Analytics at Hartwell Healthcare. 30% more than I was making, plus equity. I accepted immediately. Then I typed up my resignation letter, effective immediately. But I didn't send it. Not yet. First, I forwarded all my carefully gathered evidence, the documentation of discrimination, favoritism, and rule-bending to my private email. Then I emptied my desk after hours, taking only personal items, leaving all company property neatly organized. The next morning, I walked into Elliot's office before he arrived and placed 3 items on his desk: my resignation letter, a USB drive, and a note that simply read, "For your eyes only." Then I waited at my desk, calmly working through emails until I heard Elliot's bellow from down the hall. Zoe, my office, now. I walked in to find him standing behind his desk, face purple with rage, the USB drive plugged into his computer. On the screen was a presentation I'd created titled, The Vance Method, Nepotism, Discrimination, and Financial Misrepresentation at Company. What the hell is this? He demanded. I closed the door behind me. That's a comprehensive record of your behavior over the past 3 years, Elliot. Every promise you made and broke. Every qualified woman you passed over. Every number you fudged to make yourself look better. This is blackmail, he sputtered. No, I corrected him. Blackmail would involve me asking for something in return for keeping quiet. I'm not asking for anything. I've already accepted a position at Hartwell Healthcare. This is just information. You're going to our client? That's a breach of your non-compete. I smiled slightly. Check clause 3.4 of my employment contract. The non-compete only applies to direct competitors in our industry segment. Hartwell is a healthcare provider, not a marketing firm. Different segment entirely. His face contorted with fury. You planned this. All of it. I learned from the best, Elliot. You taught me that merit doesn't matter. Loyalty doesn't matter. Only power matters. So I got some. I gestured to the screen. That presentation isn't going anywhere yet. It's just for you. A reminder that actions have consequences. Are you threatening me? He asked, voice dangerously low. I'm leaving, Elliot. Today is my last day. How you behave going forward will determine whether copies of that presentation find their way to HR, the board, and the industry publications that love a good scandal. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and you should know, Madeline Hartwell and I had a lovely conversation about you. She sends her regards. His face went from purple to ashen. Goodbye, Elliot. Good luck explaining to the executive team why their biggest new client specifically requested that you and Bryce be removed from their account management team. I walked out of Elliot's office with my head high while behind me. His phone was already ringing. I could just make out the executive VP's name on the caller ID. I smiled to myself. News travels fast. That afternoon, I watched from the coffee shop across the street as Elliot was escorted from the building by security, carrying a cardboard box of his belongings. His face was a mask of cold fury, but I could see the shock in his eyes. Men like him never expect consequences. I didn't feel the rush of triumph I'd imagined. Instead, there was a quiet satisfaction like solving a particularly difficult equation and knowing the answer was correct. My phone buzzed with messages from former colleagues. OMG, what happened to Elliot? Did you know they fired Elliot? Bryce is freaking out in the conference room. I didn't respond to any of them. Some battles are won in silence. My first day at Hartwell Healthcare was the following Monday. New building, new security badge, new desk. When I introduced myself to my team professionals who knew their worth and weren't afraid to show it, the respect in their eyes was immediate. No one asked who I knew or how I'd gotten the job. They'd seen my work during the pitch. That was enough. I thought that would be the end of it. I'd won. Elliot was gone. I had the position I deserved. Better, even. The story should have ended there. But revenge, once set in motion, rarely stops where you expect it to. 3 weeks into my new role, I received a LinkedIn message from Corinne Vance, Elliot's wife. We need to talk, it's important. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I knew who Corinne was, of course. I'd seen her at company events. Tall, elegant, with a practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. She managed a boutique art gallery downtown and moved in social circles that treated work as an amusing hobby rather than a necessity. What would we have to talk about? I replied finally. My husband, your new job, things that shouldn't be discussed over LinkedIn. Coffee tomorrow? Against my better judgment, I agreed. The next day, I met Corinne at an upscale cafe far from both our workplaces. She was already there when I arrived, a porcelain cup of untouched tea in front of her. Up close, she looked different than I remembered, thinner, with dark circles beneath her expertly applied makeup. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. Her voice was steady, but I could see tension in the set of her shoulders. I was curious, I admitted. I'm not sure what we have to discuss. She met my eyes directly. I know what you did. To Elliot. I kept my expression neutral. I accepted a job with a different company. That's all. No, she said quietly. That's not all. You took everything from him. The job, the reputation, the future, all of it. I felt a flicker of unease. I think you're overestimating my influence. Am I? She reached into her designer bag and pulled out a familiar-looking USB drive. My USB drive. He showed me everything. Your little presentation, the emails, the recordings, all of it. My stomach tightened. Then you know what kind of man your husband is. A bitter smile crossed her face. I've known what kind of man Elliot is for 23 years, Zoe. Did you think you were revealing some great truth to me? I didn't know how to respond to that. Corinne took a sip of her tea, grimacing slightly as if it had gone cold. He can't find work, she continued. Not in this city. Not after Hartwell blacklisted him. Every company he interviews with somehow hears about what happened. His old clients won't take his calls. Did you know he's had to cash out his retirement account just to cover our mortgage? I felt a twinge of something. Not guilt, exactly, but the uncomfortable recognition that my actions had rippled beyond their intended target. That sounds difficult, I said carefully, but I didn't blacklist him. I didn't tell anyone outside Hartwell what happened. But you knew they would, she said softly. You're too smart not to have known exactly how this would play out. The business world is small, Zoe. Gossip travels. Especially juicy gossip about powerful men who fall from grace. She wasn't wrong. I had known, or at least suspected, how thoroughly Elliot would be ostracized once word got out. That had been part of the plan. What do you want from me, Corinne? An apology? Your husband stole a promotion that I earned and gave it to his incompetent nephew. He systematically undermined my career for years. Am I supposed to feel bad that there were consequences? No, she said, surprising me. I don't expect you to feel bad. Elliot made his bed. But there's something you should know. Something that wasn't in your meticulous research. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through it, then turned it to show me a photo. A teenage girl with Elliot's eyes but Corinne's elegant features, sitting in what looked like a hospital room, smiling weakly at the camera. This is Mia, our daughter. She's 17 and she has lupus. She was diagnosed 2 years ago. It's been challenging. The medical bills are substantial, even with insurance. Elliot's job, the job you made sure he lost, provided the health insurance that covers her treatments. I stared at the photo, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. I didn't know he had a daughter. No, Corinne agreed. You didn't. Elliot keeps his home life and work life separate. He doesn't talk about Mia's condition at the office. He doesn't use it as an excuse for anything. I'm sorry about your daughter, I said, and I meant it. But that doesn't excuse what Elliot did. I'm not asking for excuses, Corinne said, taking her phone back. I'm giving you context. 2 years ago, when Mia was diagnosed, something broke in Elliot. The man who always believed he could control everything suddenly couldn't fix the one thing that mattered most. He became desperate, grasping for any control he could find. That's why he gave Bryce my promotion? Because his daughter is sick? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. Corinne shook her head. No, he gave Bryce your promotion because he's selfish and short-sighted and afraid. But his fear, that comes from a real place. She paused. Bryce's father, Elliot's brother, offered to help with Mia's medical expenses if Elliot helped Bryce's career. It was wrong, it was unfair to you. But he did it for Mia. I sat back, processing this new information. It didn't erase what Elliot had done, but it painted his actions in a more complex light than the simple narrative of male privilege and nepotism I'd constructed. Why are you telling me this? I asked finally. Because I want you to understand the full impact of what you've done. Her voice was calm, not accusatory. You've punished Elliot, yes, but you've also punished Mia. Our insurance coverage ends in 60 days. Without it, her medications will cost over $4,000 a month. Treatments even more. The silence between us stretched uncomfortably. What do you expect me to do about that? I asked finally. Nothing, Corinne said, standing up. You won't do anything. You'll go back to your new job and your new life, and we'll figure something out. We always do. I just wanted you to know that revenge is rarely as clean as we hope it will be. There's always collateral damage. She left without another word, leaving me sitting alone with my cooling coffee and a knot of emotions I couldn't quite unravel. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Mia's face on Corinne's phone. I told myself it wasn't my responsibility. I told myself Elliot could find another job, maybe not in this city, but somewhere. I told myself a lot of things. None of them helped. The next morning, I called Madeline Hartwell and requested a meeting. She seemed surprised, but agreed to see me that afternoon. In her office, surrounded by the trappings of the success I'd worked so hard to achieve, I told her everything. About Elliot, about Bryce, about the manipulation and the postponed promotion, about my careful documentation and calculated revenge, and finally, about Mia. When I finished, Madeline was silent for a long moment. That's quite a story, she said finally. Why are you telling me this now? Because I need to know if you blacklisted Elliot Vance. She raised an eyebrow. Would it matter if I had? Yes, I said simply. It would matter to a 17-year-old girl who needs medical care. Madeline studied me thoughtfully. When you approached me about a position here, You demonstrated exceptional analytical skills and strategic thinking. But do you know what really impressed me? The fact that you stood up in that meeting and saved a presentation that wasn't yours to save. You could have let Vance and his nephew crash and burn. Instead, you stepped in and did what was right for the client, even though it meant helping people who had wronged you. She leaned back in her chair. No, Zoe, I didn't blacklist Elliot Vance. I merely shared my impressions of him with a few colleagues when they asked. The truth did the rest. And if those colleagues were to hear a more nuanced version of events? I asked carefully. That would depend on who was sharing it and why. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. Is that what you want to do? Rehabilitate the man who tried to destroy your career? No, I said honestly. I don't care about rehabilitating Elliot, but I do care about not being the person who destroyed a teenage girl's access to health care. There's a difference. Madeline nodded slowly. Yes, there is. She was quiet for a moment, thinking. I have a contact at Regional Health Partners. They're looking for someone to head up their marketing department. It's not as prestigious as Elliot's previous role, but it's solid. Good benefits. Why would you help him? I asked, genuinely curious. I'm not helping him, she corrected. I'm helping you. Because the woman I hired wouldn't be able to do her best work while carrying this particular burden. She smiled slightly. Besides, sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's having them know they owe their salvation to you. 3 days later, Elliot Vance received a call from Regional Health Partners, inviting him to interview for their Director of Marketing position. He got the job. The health insurance would kick in after 30 days, well before Corinne's 60-day deadline. I know this because Corinne sent me a text. Thank you. Just those 2 words. Nothing more needed to be said. As for Bryce, without his uncle's protection, his incompetence quickly became apparent to everyone. He was demoted within 2 months and left the company shortly after. Last I heard, he was working at his father's car dealership. And me? I thrived at Hartwell. My team respected me. My work was valued. 6 months after I started, I was promoted to Vice President of Analytics and Strategic Planning. Sometimes I think about Elliot, working in his less prestigious job, knowing that I'm the reason he has it, knowing that I could have destroyed him completely but chose not to, knowing that every time his daughter gets the treatment she needs, it's because of my mercy, not his merit. That's the thing about revenge. The stories always focus on the destruction, the moment when you crush your enemy and watch them suffer. But sometimes, the most powerful revenge is more subtle. It's holding someone's fate in your hands and choosing to be better than they were, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free of the burden of their destruction. I ran into Elliot once, about a year later, at a healthcare industry conference. I was there representing Hartwell. He was there with his new company. For a moment, we just looked at each other across the crowded reception area. Then he gave me a small, tight nod acknowledgement, not quite gratitude, before turning away. I didn't need his gratitude. I didn't even need his acknowledgement. What I needed was to know that I had won on my terms, not his. That I had claimed the success I deserved without becoming the kind of person who would sacrifice an innocent to get it. That's the revenge I got. Not just the corner office or the VP title or even watching Elliot lose everything he valued. My revenge was becoming the person who could have destroyed him completely but chose a different path. My revenge was knowing that every time he looks at his daughter, healthy and thriving, he has to reckon with the fact that the woman he tried to diminish turned out to be more powerful and more merciful than he could ever be. So that's my story. Not the one I expected to tell when this all started, but maybe a better one in the end. I think about all of you watching this sometimes wondering if you're facing your own Elliot Vance, someone who's blocking your path, diminishing your worth, making you doubt yourself. And I want you to know, you are not powerless. You are not trapped. There is always a way forward, even if it's not the way you initially imagined. Document everything. Know your worth. Build your skills so completely that when you walk away, they feel the loss. And remember that the sweetest victory isn't destroying your enemies. It's thriving so completely that they become irrelevant to your story. If this resonated with you, Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments times when you faced workplace injustice and how you handled it. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, share it with them. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in these struggles is the first step toward finding your own path through them. Thank you for listening. For those of you dealing with your own Elliots right now, stay strong. Your time is coming. And when it does, remember, how you win matters just as much as winning itself.